how to influence other people. Maybe you are in a leadership role. Perhaps you are in a leadership role where you are at a place where you're in a very highly visible role and you need to influence other people to help you be able to grow your departments, grow your businesses, grow your following, or etc. Have you ever wondered how exactly do you influence people? Well, we're going to talk about that today. I'm going to share with you my three C's to influence and give you some insight there. We're also going to dive into the definition of influence because if you are truly trying to influence other people, it's important for you to know how to do so. Now, I do want to say that this is a shorter video and I'm going to highlight strategies that have helped me to learn how to influence people that will absolutely help you learn how to influence other people. But there's a lot that goes into influence. That's why you should absolutely subscribe to my channel if you want to learn how to be able to communicate and navigate yourself in some of those very challenging, high stakes situations where you find yourself under pressure. Now, I want to give a special shout out to Kat 23rd. She is an amazing, amazing viewer on my channel. And Kat mentioned this topic as something that would be beneficial to the audience to learn a lot more about. So thank you so much, Kat 23rd, for the topic of influence. And because it requires a lot of depth to this topic, more than likely I'm going to talk about it at length a little bit later this evening or on one of my evening lives. Now, when you think about the word influence, let's talk about what the word influence actually means and why it's important. If you are at a place where you are a leader, learning how to influence others is a mandatory requirement. It is going to be very difficult for people to understand how you are going to help them as leaders to do this. So, before we go into it, let's make sure we're all on the same page. I'm going to read what the actual definition is for influence so that we are all on the same page when we talk about how can we influence other people. According to Merriam-Webster, influence is the capacity to indirectly affect the character, development, or behavior of people and events, often without the use of force. That is critical. Without the use of force. So that is from Merriam-Webster's dictionary. I have it on my phone. Now, when we think about that definition, we're influencing other people. We're doing it without force. We're impacting their development. So how do we actually influence people? I'm going to break it down into three C's and I'll do what I can to talk about each one into detail. And if I can't go into all of them in detail, I'll talk about it later this afternoon. There are a lot of aspects to influencing other people, but I'm going to focus on three C's. The first C is how you communicate. The second C is how you are able to be very, 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 very consistent. And then the third C is compassion. Now, I want to say hello and welcome to those of you watching the live today. If you have ever wanted to learn how to influence people as a leader, maybe you are a woman in leadership, maybe you're a man in leadership, or you may be thinking about leadership and you're just not quite sure how to go about doing it, let's talk about it in the comments below. This channel heavily focuses on advanced communication skills and strategies that will help you to communicate confidently and concisely under pressure. If this is something that you want to learn how to do, think on your feet, advocate for yourself, and you absolutely want to subscribe to the channel. Let me know what part of the big, beautiful world you all are joining from today. Now, I just read the definition of influence. And for those of you who just missed it, when this live is published, go back and take a look at it. And listen to me talk about the definition of influence, or you can look at Merriam-Webster. That is where I received the definition of influence today. Now, when you think about influencing, as I mentioned, I focus on three C's, and there's a lot that goes into influence, but this is a great foundation for you to get started. In order for you to influence other people, how can you do that? Well, the very first C I mentioned was communication. Now, you may be saying, well, this channel focuses heavily on communication, and that's why you mentioned it. That's not the case. You cannot influence anyone by staring at them and saying nothing. There has to be some form of a communication, a dialogue that you have with this specific person. Now, how you communicate, the way you communicate, when you communicate, all of that comes into play in terms of how you can influence other people. Remember, the definition talked about influence in terms of affecting the behavior, the development of another person without force. Now, if you can communicate in a way that lets this person feel like they are being heard, you understand what's going on, and you are able to meet them where they are, so to speak, then that allows that person to feel like they are connected to you. And that connection is very, very powerful when you're building influence. If you are in a leadership role and perhaps you are struggling with a certain issue that's happening to you specifically, and you really, really need some help as it relates to support, maybe you need some additional funding, maybe you need something else, you have to be able to influence other people so that they can help you accomplish these specific roles, tasks, funding opportunities you're trying to do. I want to say hello to Muhammad Ahmed. Hello, how are you doing today? Welcome, welcome, friend. Now, my second C that I want to share with you is your ability to be consistent. Now, consistency plays a critical role in building influence. If you are a leader and you are struggling with influencing other people, or perhaps you feel like your influence has started to fade, there's a reason why. And a lot of times the reason why your influence may not be as great as it was previously is because there's some aspect of your communication demeanor that is not consistent with the way that it was before. Let me give you an example. There was a situation that happened with someone that I know, and they started off a new role doing very well. They were able to get things done, they were able to make some changes, and etc. But what happened over time in that role, and they were in a C-suite role, they were actually a CEO of a company. And over time, what happened is that they noticed that they were not able to influence people as much as they were able to do in the past. So, what did they do? They reached out to me for support and wanted to know, well, I'm losing my influence. What is it that I'm doing? When we had a conversation, we uncovered that they became a bit more lax in how they communicated. Instead of communicating in a very professional, polished way as they did when they first started the role, they started to become a bit more lax. They started to use curse words. They started to just communicate in a way that did not reflect their very best version of themselves as they did in the very beginning. Once we were able to identify that and come up with a strategy to help them overcome that challenge, they were able to start building their influence back again in a very, very, very fast way. Now, I share this with you because your consistency will either help people to trust you or cause people to not trust you. And if you are being very consistent in terms of how you are communicating, the way you are communicating, it will help you to learn and be able to influence other people. Now, I want to know from those of you watching the live, tell me a time, or if you're watching the replay, tell me about a time when you felt like you were able to influence other people to adopt an idea or to go with a project or an initiative or funding opportunity, and what worked really well for you when you were influencing other people. Many individuals watch this video via live and they watch the replay. And I want to be that place on YouTube that has a massive amount of volume of content that will help you be able to be that best leader you want to be. And learning how we all influence other people will help you to do that. Now, my third C that I mentioned to you as it relates to influence is compassion. Compassion is important in influencing. Why? Because remember from the definition, you have to have the ability to affect, meaning you are causing a change to happen to someone else. And if you are not compassionate and you do not care what is going on with this person in their lives, I can guarantee you, you will not be able to influence them. Your influence will fade and people will not take you seriously ever again. Having the ability to connect with someone and have empathy and understand They have their own problems, they have their own challenges that they are dealing with, is a critical part to becoming more influential as a leader. Now, I do want to say this, if you can start working on the 3 C's that I mentioned, the 3 C's to influence. And as I mentioned, there's a lot more that goes into influencing, but I wanted to at least give you something to work with today that you can start working on immediately as it relates to becoming more influential as a leader. The first C is going to be communication. The second C is consistency. And the third C is compassion. Working on these 3 C's will help you to be able to become more influential as a leader. Now, if you happen to be a woman in leadership and you are in a more highly visible role, a high stakes position, and you maybe are just starting out, or perhaps you've been in the role for a long time and you're starting to notice your influence is not where it needs to be, I would highly recommend for you to reach out to me at exciteexcellence.org. You are more than welcome to contact me for a myriad of services. One, if you need to develop a strategy in terms of how can you gain your influence back, contact me for an executive strategy session. We will come up with a plan that will help you to be able to gain more influence. If you know you're in a highly visible role and you know that your communication style, maybe you perhaps are struggling with thinking on your feet. Maybe you don't advocate for yourself. Perhaps you are having a hard time controlling your emotions under pressure. Maybe you freeze when someone speaks to you in terms of a challenging topic and you just don't know how do you mentally process that. Contact me for a high stakes communication intensive. This is a one of a kind service that will help you to be able to communicate at that higher level than your peers. This is a transformational, very serious intensive where I work with you and basically approach it in the way of a surgeon. I am a dentist, so I know all about surgery, but it is more of a surgical approach to how you communicate so that when you are trying to become more influential as a woman in leadership, you're trying to become that person that makes that big impact on the world. You are in a very good place to not only communicate at a higher level than your peers, but you can communicate more confidently and concisely when you are under pressure. Reach out to me for support. There's only but so much I can do in a group setting here on YouTube to help you get to that level. There's a point in time where you have to just get support. You have to invest in yourself to get where you need to be. I hope these 3 C's help you start to develop influence. And if you want me to go into more detail, let me know. I may talk a bit more about those and give you some stories that have happened over the years as it relates to influence later this afternoon. We'll see where the day goes. But in the interim, feel free to like this video. It does allow it to reach more people, and subscribe to the channel if you like this content and you really want to try to communicate at a higher level. There's a couple videos you may want to check out. Thinking on your feet, managing your emotions under pressure, your tone of voice, eye contact. All of those videos on my live tab will give you a very solid foundation in terms of how you can start communicating at a higher level than your peers. I will see you all in the next video. Bye for now. And David XMLG, good morning, David. Good to see you, friend. Have a good day.